I went to trial with Larry Hoover, along with several others. Everyone else has told our story except for the individuals who actually went to trial with him or that was part of the indictment. See, tonight's topic is not about our story, but a little introduction who I was and who I am today. And a few things just to clear up about the case that have been repeatedly incorrectly stated. First of all, see, in my past, I was a gangster. I was a thug. I was a hustler. I was violent. I was destructive. And I was a wild, ignorant radical, growing up as a youngster in the hood. And back then, this is what classified me as a so-called, they say real nigga, right? But while I was in prison, I had to grow or die. I finally became a real man when I found the power of the mind. See, I'm someone who lived a life and was about that life. They say solid or whatever, tested. I came from the mud. I've been in the trenches. I was born and raised in Chicago, main streets of Inglewood on the southwest side. See, my life took a turn when I became involved as a youngster in gang activities and when I embraced that gangster lifestyle. I was eventually, though, indicted in 1995, allegedly as one of the top gang leaders of the Gang Disciples, who controlled and oversaw most of the Inglewood area on the southwest side of Chicago back in the early 90s. In the federal indictment, I was charged as a gang lord and a kingpin in the case of United States versus Larry Hoover. I mean, it was all over the news for decades, which we were found guilty for allegedly, as I say, allegedly running a massive drug conspiracy and $100 million a year continued criminal enterprise. In this true life story, I was sentenced to a mandatory minimum life sentence. Yes, a mandatory minimum life sentence without possibility of parole. While serving this mandatory minimum life sentence, I was sent to 10 high security max prisons from coast to coast across America. Yes. And how this chapter ends, after 25 years of incarceration, I finally got immediate release on a reduced sentence on August 17, 2020, under the First Step Act that then President Trump signed into law in 2018. Yes, today, Mr. Hoover himself is eligible for immediate release. Why? Mr. Hoover is serving several federal life sentences that are unconstitutional under today's new federal drug sentencing laws that changed the old racist drug laws of the Sentencing Reform Act of 1986, or the mandatory drug guidelines. See, the jury in our case, which people don't know, it made in 1987 would not allow jury instructions on any drug amount or drug type. So legally, the jury never found that I or Mr. Hoover sold massive drugs or any drugs, matter of fact, in the alleged drug conspiracy or the continued criminal enterprise we were indicted for. Therefore, Mr. Hoover is currently serving several federal life sentences for no drugs. Yes, no drugs. Because of all the new federal sentencing drug laws and changes in the federal criminal procedures since 2010, but really began in 2000 with the Supreme Court case Apprendi versus United States. For example, the Fair Sentencing Act, also that the then President Obama signed into law, but he did not make it retroactive in 2010. And then years later, then President Donald Trump, he signed into law and made the Fair Sentencing Act retroactive by way of the First Step Act in 2018. And along with Supreme Court case laws like Apprendi, Booker, Blakely, and Alene, etc., these are the Supreme Court cases that changed the federal sentencing landscape for the past 2 decades. Simply what I'm saying is because of these new laws, Mr. Hoover has legally overserved his federal sentence under federal law. Legally, what I'm saying, he is eligible under the rule of law, federal law, Supreme Court law, fundamental fairness, the principles that this nation is built on. See, Mr. Hoover is eligible for immediate release. Why? Mr. Hoover is serving several federal life sentences that are unconstitutional under today new drug sentencing laws that changed the old racist drug laws of the Sentencing Reform Act of 1986 of the mandatory drug guidelines. See, like I said, the jury in our case never allowed jury instruction on any drug amount or drug type. So legally, the jury never found that I or Mr. Hoover sold massive drugs or any drugs. Matter of fact, in the last drug conspiracy or continuing criminal enterprise, like I said before, that we were indicted for. And therefore, he is currently serving several federal life sentences for no drugs. One thing that needs to be clarified that Ms. Hoover was never charged with a RICO. We were charged under the continued criminal enterprise, which is the federal statute. See, what is it? Kingpin statute, which we were charged with? The continued criminal enterprise statute, which is commonly referred to as the CCE statute or the Kingpin statute, is a federal law that target large-scale, drug traffickers who were responsible for, like long-term or elaborate, as they say, drug conspiracies. That's what we was charged with. But see, a RICO is a federal statute short for the racketeering, influence, and corrupt organizations. It's part of, it deal with organized crime. That's something we wasn't charged with. So it's a big difference, which is why I'm out, because I was charged strictly for, drugs, nothing else. So was he, which the jury didn't find him guilty of any drugs. Now, as for me today, I have a new chapter. Since being released, I am cultivating new titles. I am an inspirational speaker, and I'm a youth motivational speaker, a credible messenger, a children author, also an owner of a clothing line. This is proof that anyone can turn their life around. My story proves that no matter where you come from, it's never too late to create positive change.